Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and sadly welcome to another In Memoriam video. Go over to Neil's movie channel, I'll leave a link. He's did a tribute to Ryan O'Neill and Shirley Ann Field recently. But today I'm going to talk about Andre Braugher and his sad loss at the age of 61 recently. Now, probably nowadays, to the young folks, he'll be popular for being in the sitcom Brooklyn Nine-Nine. But for me and a lot of people, perhaps my age, we knew him more as Detective Frank Pemberton in Homicide, Life in the Street. One of those TV actors that never really kind of made a splash in the cinema. Some people, I guess, are typecast if they're in a long-running show, and also for some reason some people just don't get those big breaks in the cinema. He was in Frank Darabont's The Mist, as Thomas Jane's neighbour who always thought he was right, which I guess leads us to Homicide, Life in the Street. I mean, sometimes, you know, as sad as somebody dying is, some good comes out of it, and hopefully more people go back and watch Homicide, Life in the Street. Brooklyn Nine-Nine is what it is. It's a sitcom, a police sitcom. But Homicide, Life in the Street is in the conversation for me as the greatest TV show of all time, along with The Wire and Shklovsky's Decalogue. But again, even at the time it was out, it wasn't as appreciated because NYPD Blue was on at the same time, and certainly in the UK, Homicide, Life in the Street was treated so badly by Channel 4. As far as I remember, I mean, I didn't really watch NYPD Blue, but it was always on the same day, at the same time. It was usually on at like 9 or 10 at night, whereas Homicide, Life in the Street would be on sometimes 11 o'clock on a Wednesday, other times 1 o'clock in the morning on a Thursday. It was just messed around so much. It's probably because, Channel 4 almost didn't want anybody to see it, because very much like lots of David Simon programmes, not just David Simon, obviously there's other people involved as well, it's based in his book. He does tell the truth. You know, Homicide wasn't like Columbo, not again against Columbo, but it wasn't like everything's neatly tied up at the end of every episode. This isn't about black and white and everything's tidy and neat. Homicide, Life in the Street is about the grey areas, the moral dilemmas that everybody faces. And Andre Braugher's Frank Pemberton is one of the greatest characters of all time. I mean, sadly we don't even have Homicide on Blu-ray. Again, hopefully all the Brooklyn Nine-Nine fans will demand that Homicide gets a Blu-ray, but you can pick up the DVDs. I mean, Frank Pemberton was the super cop, the super detective that always knew the answer, kind of had the high ground when everybody was being emotional, he would just cut through it. He would annoy his fellow detectives. He would have philosophical discussions with everybody. The writing in Homicide was just brilliant, and there's the movie from 2000, which itself is a wonderful piece and kind of ties a knot on the whole series. But we're kind of introduced to Frank Pemberton through Bayliss, who's coming over from, I think it's the mayor's security detail or the governor's security detail, and learning the ropes from Frank, who is a fairly abrasive character, but they took his kind of super detective so far. What could you do with it? Well, something happens that for me is right up there with one of the greatest or worst moments in television history. Because you have to remember, I know some people might not believe me, but in the olden days of the early 90s, if you watched a TV show, a series, you had to wait a week to see the next episode. I know that seems crazy nowadays, where you can watch 10 episodes back to 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 back. But in those days you actually had to wait a week. So when the thing happens to Frank Pemberton, it was generally truly shocking. And personally, I spent the rest of the week in shell shock, waiting for the next episode to see what happened. And you don't really have that anymore with TV shows being binge watched. If people thought the end of the kind of Omar character or his timeline in The Wire was pretty shocking, that's nothing like what happens to Frank Pemberton in Homicide, Life on the Street. But then the progression of that character through subsequent series just kind of shows the range that Andre Braugher had. He had a great smile, he had a great bald head that, very much like Takashi Shimura in Seven Samurai, he would rub at difficult times. He always had a line or a philosophical line to spout to Bayliss, especially when Bayliss has been having a hard time with certain cases. If you know Homicide, Life in the Street, you know what I'm talking about. He had wonderful bursts of rage. His work in the box, getting confessions out of suspects, was legendary. And the cataclysmic event that happens to him, when I first saw it, it was he's doing this to get a confession, before it actually sunk in what was going on. It is, for me, the most shocking moment in television history. Even though I've watched Homicide probably about 3 times all the way through, I tend to skip that bit because I can't actually watch it because it's too distressing. But again, Andre Braugher had charisma. He was super cool, one of the coolest men ever to wear braces. And yeah, sometimes movie stars are kind of held up as better than or superior to TV stars, if you like. But Andre Braugher could go toe to toe with anybody. And it's just sad that he's gone way too soon, but life is unfair, as we see in Homicide, life in the street. So again, hopefully people will actually read his bio when they're reading his obituary and read about his career. Excuse me. And they will seek out Homicide, Life in the Street. As far as I'm aware, it's not streaming anywhere. You will actually have to buy physical media and buy the DVDs, but it's such a great show. And again, this was before, well, maybe it wasn't before HBO, but it was certainly before being able to swear a lot and show lots of nudity and sex and kind of extreme violence. You know, Homicide is all about brilliant writing, brilliant performances, getting to know the characters, loving characters, hating characters. And Homicide, Life in the Street, along with Northern Exposure, were kind of two shows that no matter how bad my week was, I knew at the end of that week you would see an episode of Homicide, Life in the Street, if you could find it on Channel 4. Or you would see an episode of Northern Exposure. Two completely different shows, but two absolutely wonderful shows. So again, if you've never checked out Homicide, Life in the Street, please do, as a tribute to Andre Braugher, gone way too early, age 61. Yeah, so unfortunately just another in memoriam video. Obviously I don't do it every time somebody dies because I would be very busy, unfortunately, because death never takes a day off. But this one was personal. This one bummed me out, because Frank Pemberton's just one of those characters in TV, along with other characters in Homicide, like G, played by Yaphet Kotto, of course. But Frank Pemberton is just one of those characters, just so well written and so well performed. I mean, Andre Braugher was Frank Pemberton, and we'll always have Frank Pemberton to look back on and remember. And he teaches us how to do detective work properly, and how to wear braces properly. So thanks very much for watching. As I said, if you haven't seen Homicide, Life in the Street, or if you have but you just saw it 30 years ago, please revisit it, because it is just such a great programme. Yeah, this is Solitude Ronan from Solitude Ronan Films, saying farewell.